Okay, before the break, we started looking at positioning things and layouts, moving from everything covering the entire width of the page to getting some columns. Looked at our first way of doing that, which leading into responsive layouts, which we'll talk about next week. I want to make a point though. Next week we're looking at different devices and stuff. So for those who are close enough to come to campus occasionally, some days when we're doing responsive layouts, might not be a bad day to come to campus because the cabinet that I use as a podium is actually a charging station. It's actually just a giant charger. Doesn't show up much on there. Maybe I'll pull it back a little. Yeah, so it's actually the cabinet's a big charging station, and we've got I think like 16 iPads in here. 10-inch?
Some of that.
I guess 10-inch size. I'm not gonna
understand how they everything diagonal or
the diagonal.
yeah. I always forget, but yeah, there's a bunch.
So 10 or 11 inches on the iPads, and then we have 16 Android tablets, which are old, and 9-inch ones there. New ones are on the way, but they're just being ordered like right now. Within the last week, plus or minus a week from right now. Either last week or maybe next week is when the order is being placed for them. So new Android tablets are coming, but for our class, the old ones will still open a browser. And there's and then a bunch of Surface Pros here in the lab. And this equipment hardly ever gets used. I have no idea when the Surface Pros came in. Somebody mentioned it one day, and it's like, oh, there's a cabinet full of those. It's like, I had no idea. The iPads, we bought those, and they were delivered in April of 2020. So basically, they've sat here and never got any use. So it'd be nice to get some use for those who live close to campus. We're doing responsive screen sizes next week, and there are multiple ones in here that we need to start using. And whoever ordered the Surface Pros, yeah, this year's equipment order includes the pins and the keyboards. They only ordered them like tablets, but it will work for our purposes of looking at next week of looking at websites on different pages. I'm trying to close that for if you want to come in and use it, it'd be nice to use this equipment that's been sitting here for years. The Android tablets, they're old, but they got a lot of use before. They've gotten a lot of use in their life. The iPads came in April of 2020, and everybody forgot they were there by the time we came back to campus. So it'd be nice to use it because
the hilarious bit is they were probably out of date by the time they even everybody came back to campus, wouldn't it?
Oh, the iPads?
Yeah.
They use the latest version. They've been updated to the latest operating system. So they're not so old that they won't run the latest one. What is it on iPads? Is it 12? For a long time, there was always one behind the phone, and that was easy to track. But then they got off. But yeah, the iPads do still update to the latest one because the latest operating system. But they are like 4 years old and have basically never been used. So it'd be nice if we could use them occasionally for those who come to class. Before you jump back on Android, those who live close to campus, next week we're looking at different screen sizes. And yeah, this cabinet I use as a podium is just a charger filled with iPads and Android tablets, and then there's a bunch of Surface Pro tablets. So if you live close to campus, next week might be a good time to come and just check your stuff on actual devices, because it'd be nice to actually use that stuff again. But that's next week. And it's a Learning Anywhere class if you want to. I've just ordered the newest round of equipment, so it's on our mind that it'd be nice if the equipment were going to be used.
Yeah, once before you phase it out.
Occasionally, the Android tablets, we used to run the mobile app class all the time, so those got a lot of use. But there's new tablets coming, hopefully they'll get a lot of use. And VR headsets. And, which I guess is also one place to view websites. Because in the VR, you go open the browser and you're looking at it on the curved screen. So your website might look entirely different on the curved screen. Oh, I don't think our little space proposal's been turned in yet. I need to add that to that. Sorry, let me make
For the VR space to jump
yes.
this.
Something, yes, VR in div screens.
Honestly,
For SDEV. Just to add a class that those will definitely be used in because that's a very different screen size, but they all have browsers on them.
yeah, and they're fairly dynamic. You can change those screen size however you want in VR.
Yes.
I will say that speaking of VR, that server area wouldn't, where we did the game development, that wouldn't necessarily be a bad spot for it.
We look at it, there's still a bunch of stuff to bump into.
Well, the Meta headsets, how you can set up a border and it will automatically keep you, like, it will tell you, hey, you're getting way too close.
We might have to do that, but we're trying to avoid it.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to get an extra, yeah.
I'm just saying, since you don't think you'll be able to do it by the next.
Oh yeah, so yeah, in 248 we will be using that in there. Actually, in 248 we'll probably come out to the hallway and use that for your space right outside the labs.
Because I will say the Guardians that I use the Quest and the Guardians is very good at knowing exactly where the hell you are and getting right in your face whenever you're getting close to where you can told them no.
Yes, I still hurt myself a couple times though. I was in my home gym and tested debugging a bowling game and went straight into the great big weightlifting equipment.
Yeah.
Huge thing.
Meta cannot help you if you put stuff inside of the.
Yes, but that's a different one. So
the envelope only saves you as long as you don't put things in the envelope.
So, but there's equipment. So for those close to campus, next week might be a good week to be in the classroom and give some of the equipment a try instead of emulators. Back to layouts, absolute, it worked. It gave us 3 columns on the page, but there was a lot to do there. So it'd be kind of nice to find maybe a slightly easier way to do that, or a different way to do it. So I'm going to go back to the original, CSS page, make a copy of that. File save as, I'm going to call this relative.css. And then on that absolute.html, I'm going to make another copy of this called relative. But before I make the copy, I think I'll add a link to it. So add another link or adjust this link. Just a relative.html. And we'll look at relative positions. And I'll make a copy of that. Save as relative.html. So close the absolute stuff. And then now we want to use that relative style sheet. At this point, you can probably take a pretty good guess of some of what we want to do. So we'll kind of do the same thing. So let's start with our header. Take our header, set our position. Somebody want to tell me what keyword goes here? Got any guesses at it?
Relative.
And then top and left would be the same. So from the top, let's come down 3.4 elements, and from the left, we'll come over 5.6 elements. Let's see what that looks like. Reload this, jump over to the other page. We put our header in about the same position, but notice now everything after moved with it. So we didn't, if you remember back it's probably 45 minutes ago or so. When we did the header with absolute positioning, it just moved it down, and then the normal flow all pushed up to the top. So everything pushed up to the top. But here, the other stuff at least moved down with it, kind of. Maybe at least stayed in the position that it was in, because this would have been afterwards. So I guess, yeah, more of a stayed in the position it was in, but we didn't completely lose the normal flow. Consider our navigation bar the same. I used an aside element, but there is a nav element. Let's say position relative top of under to a point and left. I was going to type something. -2 EM. That'll work. To talk about what this is, and the keyword will make sense if you can't already guess where that's going to be. I guess I need to come down further than that. Let me increase those numbers. So let's change that to 23 points and -1.2. See if this is more. Okay, there we go. That's more where I was aiming for. But remember, I don't know, 45 minutes ago or so when we did the positioning, bless you, it was always the top left of the window. So top was always measured from here. And then, like the name relative implies, we said 12 points down relative to the previous element. And now that we're controlling where things go on there, the previous element is the one right before it on the HTML. As we read the HTML top to bottom in order, the elements we come across, we set our sizing relative to the one right before it. From there, you can probably figure out what to do on stuff, but let's move the paragraphs down. Select dot first. Let's say position relative from the top. We're coming down right below the, a little bit below the navigation bar. So I'm going to say, 3.2 elements. So that's like 3.2 rows of text. That's where that EM unit's coming really useful. You can start measuring things off based off the text on the page. Let's come down to another 3 rows of text. And on the left, let's make it, 3.2 characters over from where that other one ended. Save it.
Is dot first not a thing? And I thought it was left, middle, and right.
Oh, yes, it is. Thank you. I forgot what I named things before the break. There we go. So moved it over a little. And this is an important one. Let me go to the inspector. You can see what I want to talk about here, but if I hover over stuff, hopefully see it better. So notice that our aside element with the navigation still goes all the way across the screen. So when we say from the left, it's from the left of that element. We probably make that shorter, right? We don't need nearly that much space we don't need nearly that much space. So let's say width of 300 pixels. That's where that might work. Reload that, and now it's only that wide. As we get into layouts, we don't need a lot of extra width on our pages. But if we say from the left, it's from the left of the previous element, not after it on the left.
Left of wherever that previous element started.
But again, you're gonna wanna play around with this, make random changes, trial and error, figure things out. I guess our width, we can still do the same size as before, 21%. Seemed to give us a pretty good column width last time. But notice it didn't break normal flow, so now the following paragraphs come afterwards. Or try to come afterwards because the browser decided, oh, it doesn't have to be completely afterwards. Those words those words probably aren't important. We can put them behind things.
It's very interesting to see where the computer defines an object of this.
Yes. So, well, right. This is out of normal flow though, right? Because this one was first, and then we typed this paragraph, which really means that the one we typed later should be on top. So it did break normal flow there. So let's look at real quick. Z index. This is a value of closer or further away. So let's try something. Let's say 12. You just need a positive, negative numbers. Set your layers. So 12, and that's still behind. Negative 12, still really the same thing, but it's still showing behind. But if we put a Z index on this one, so say Z index of 0, so our left column starts as the base, and then we have positive, negative numbers coming in front of or behind that base. Reload that. We're still behind, so let's try positive. Oh, it doesn't have a relative layout. Sorry. Z index doesn't do anything until we set relative positioning. All right. I'll try that. There we go. So positive is in front of it, negative is behind it. Some of y'all may have seen Z index in other places. It's not unique to CSS, but it is just Z dash index. So like the Z axis, right? Our screen is that flat XY plane like we learned in math class. It's all our XY grid. We position everything that way. Graphing from math class and graphics on the screen. It's not a coincidence that those words clearly have the same origin.
Can you go back to your
The CSS. I forgot to do relative position before I started doing Z index,
oh,
yes, that's exactly why there's going to be a lot of trial and error. And even after many years of doing this, there's still the trial and error, kind of like debugging programming. Typos happen, things, all elements are interrelated, so sometimes some changes don't behave the way we would expect them to, or maybe the change does exactly like what we expected, but it changes other stuff on the page. So definitely something to practice with. That's what we're gonna have lots of time afterwards. I guess I need to set this. So top, let's come 3.2 EM down. And from the left, we'll do.
so
Actually, I'm gonna do this 3.2 EM.
real quick on the Z index.
Mhm.
If let's just say you, for whatever reason, had like 3 or plus layers of things on top of each other, and you wanted them to be a certain pattern.
Just get more positive or more negative.
So they do look at the actual values. So like if you want some on top, you'd have 12s, in the middle would be like a 6, and the bottom might be 1.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why I went with 12. Most tutorials, and I believe our textbook uses -1, 0, and 1. It
Could be anything.
is all numbered, all integers. Floating point numbers won't work, but yeah, it does go in order. So if you have a bunch of things, the more positive it gets, the more positive ones go further in front. So this is going to put this in an odd spot, but so relative positioning, our next column, I'll go ahead and put the width too. Actually, I'm going to put width up here just to accentuate the point that order does not matter. Sorry, order order does not matter on what we are doing. Sometimes, and it'll make sense when you get to those later, sometimes you'll put one property up at the first line, and then the next property will depend on that. So in some cases, order matters, but in general, we'll say order does not matter. Unless, like, say, line 27 here depended on what line 25 did, and it'll be obvious when you hit those situations. Oh, transparency, yeah, opaque or transparent, right? We have a transparent property. So what if up here, for an example of that, what if we set the color to RGBA? So we have transparency in our color, and then like 4 lines later, we make it more transparent. Obviously, that's going to double up the transparency on that stuff. So in that case, order kind of matters, but also it doesn't necessarily matter in that if we switch those 2 lines, we would get that same off-putting effect. Just for an example of how that would work. So everybody take a second and think about where this is going to be. Relative positioning, 3.2 lines below it, and 3.2 characters to the left of the previous one. With a leading index that will put it above the previous one. So just think about it, and I'm going to reload the page in a second.
I'm gonna put the guess that because of the top thing, it's gonna be lower down the page.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's being lower down compared to the other one.
Yes. Does that match where you thought I was going to put it? It might have, might not have. So let's move it further over. So let's say 24% over. Let's see what that does. Notice we still have a bit of that normal flow. Need to go over further. So 28% over. Let's see what this does. It's past it.
You don't want anything in top, do you? So because top is putting that much further down compared to that one.
Yeah, our columns kind of make sense if it was in line with the column, right? Let's try what Brady just suggested. If you didn't hear him, he said take the top line out. Let's take top out and reload that. And moved it up.
Because it's
Notice it moved it up the amount of overlap we had. So we need to maybe go negative 23 lines. That moved us up 23 lines, but it looks like we still got a lot to go. So let me try, instead of lines, obviously we could go count lines, but I'm gonna jump over to pixels. Let's try like negative 600 pixels. Get in there. So it wanted to put it right below this, and actually not below it. It wanted to overlap it by a little bit, right? So it wanted to put it with that overlap. So we need to use that spot as our starting position for the relative. So we need to come way up, whatever the width, the length of this column is, which is also going to be different depending on your screen size, because we gave it a percentage that's based on the width of the screen you're viewing it on. So coming up 900 pixels like this probably isn't the best option.
Yeah, because 600 pixels already had mine right off the page.
So really small is not there. There, it's down below. So see how different things are happening. I'm going to leave it there. So that's the sort of stuff you're going to want to play around with after we finish up in a few minutes. One more. Well, actually, you can probably see where that's going now, right? It's okay if we move on to the next tile. We don't need to see every single aspect because now you've seen enough that you can start playing around with it, moving things around. Z index only works on absolute and relative positioning and fixed. Fixed does the same thing here. Absolute, relative, and fixed are the only place that the Z index works. But I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next layout way. And there should be enough y'all can start playing around with this. If you have any questions, let me know, because as always, when our lecture wraps up, I'm just gonna go over to my office, and I ate a snack earlier, so I'm not gonna be rushing. I'm still gonna do my I'm not gonna rush out and get my lunch tray if nobody has any questions immediately. So I'm just gonna be sitting in my office until 4 o'clock in case questions come my way. But we learn this is an active subject. We learn by doing. So make sure there's plenty of time to do stuff. And there's 2 more to look at. One to spend a little bit of time on, and then one to go quickly that is going to introduce, actually 2 that we'll use to introduce our best reference site. So the next one, I'll make a copy of this. Actually, I'll change the link first. So let's add another link here. Href equals float.html. This is the one I tend to the most. Just, I think mostly because I've had the largest amount of practice with it. Floating layout. Clear that, and then save this as file, save as float.html. And obviously we're going to make a style sheet with the same name, float.css. And I'll come back to the original style sheet and file, save as float.css. Reload this and jump over to the other page. So here's a floating layout. That top looks okay. We could set up some margins or something. Probably want some width and whoops, not that. Let me open the inspector. Only problem with the header is it goes all the way across the screen. It's way too wide. So let's make that a little bit narrower. Say header width of 456 pixels. I just randomly chose something. And aside, our navigation bar will do a width of 345 pixels. Hopefully both those sizes will fit. But so I'm starting just by getting the width. So like when we hover over it, it doesn't go all the way across the screen. Reload that. You can see it fits a little bit better. We're not using a ton of extra space this way. Could probably make all of our paragraphs. I'm going to stick with what I originally think. I want to change plans for a second there. Don't need to do that right now. But we have all kinds of space here. Let's move that over like we did before. Remember, the space inside the element is padding, and the space outside is margin. So if we do like a margin on the left and move it, I don't know, however far over we were going, 3.1 EM over about that far, and margin on the top, come down a little ways. I can't remember what I typed in the last one. That just sort of random numbers. So that was odd. Said come down, let's put a margin on top, but it didn't seem to give us any margin on the top. If I select that element, come over here and click on it. Shows that line showed up. If you hover over it, I guess it's kind of there, but it didn't really contribute anything. So go to a bigger number, bring that down further. And it says it's the bigger number. That thing's not moving. It's still like it was before. We are allowed some overflow, certain overflows in margins. And so it makes sense when you see them, they're almost always top and bottom margins, almost always top and bottom. And usually it has to do when there's multiple margins, it'll go with the larger one, but sometimes it just, other times it just, others seem out of place, like this header element right here. It just does, the browser's not gonna put a margin above it beyond that default margin that comes with the header element. And sometimes overflows are allowed, like we put a margin on top of this aside. Oh, put a bottom margin here. Margin bottom of say 18 point. Should push our stuff down, no, but it's apparently already bigger than that. We have a little bit of margin to see how the other element is sitting right below it. So if we tried to put here's basically the allowed margins. We put a margin top here of say 9 pixels. Right. This one is allowed 18 pixels of space below it. This one has 9 pixels of space above it. So it's going to completely ignore that 9 pixel and be like, oh, well, that already fits in the one that's here. But if we made that bigger, so say like 29, we should see it move. Just a little bit further down. Maybe I should do more than 29.
Because now 29 is bigger than the bottom margin of 18 points.
Yes, so it's just going to go with the larger one.
It
Smaller margins are allowed to overflow into larger margins. And even though we can't see it, there is a margin at the top of the page, which is that fixed size. But as far as the CSS is concerned, for the larger margin that overflows, it's infinite size. So the very top, we can only do so much. Oh, now the next one is our positioning. So let's say float. Let's do extreme. Let's float to the right this time. Float to the right. See, now notice our header's over there. And float up around it.
Even that just morphed. Yeah.
Yeah, so notice everything just automatically flows around it. This is why I like floats. Floats and percents are how I did responsive pages for years and years and years. Pretty much all of the 20 teams, it was pretty, every web page I did was just with floats so that it looked good on a desktop, laptop, or phone. Sometimes tablets, but I usually skip tablets myself. Because I would just kind of look for a place for it. And I want to make sure that this is below that. So we also have a clear, right? So float is find the space on the right for it. Clear is wait until it's clear on the right. And obviously if right's a keyword, left's a keyword, and for clear, we also have both. Because now I could.
So it's basically, it's floating it to the right and also making sure that the other thing is clear.
Yes. Well, this is left. And see everything below moved up. Like, oh, can adjust this and fit some space in there. So on our paragraph, so like dot left. We want to make sure it's clear on both sides. Middle. We're both make sure it's clear where before we start putting it in somewhere, and on the right, again, just make sure it's clear on both sides. Now it should be below it at least. There we go. Notice what happened with those margins though. When I said clear, float it to the navigation stuff. I said float it to the left as long as it's clear on both sides, and our margins got bigger. When we float, when we say clear, that bypasses that margin over. that overflow in the margins. So our 29 pixel margin didn't start until after our 18 pixel margin ended. So in this case, I could probably comment one of those out. I'll do this one, control slash. Control / is usually your comment out symbol, but depending on what text editor you're using, if you go to the main menu, you should see your shortcuts or your hotkeys. There we go. Bring that up a little. Now we can set up some sizes. Let's float this one to the left.
You were going to scroll to the side.
Which one?
The side. Just real quick, scroll there.
I'm actually going to take out these clear lines now, because we can do clear or float. If we start floating something, clear is implied. So float that to the left. The middle, I'm just going to ignore that and float that to the right. And then they all need to be a certain width, right? So a width of, I don't know, whatever we're doing, 23%. Oops. 23%, and a width of 23%. There's some weird stuff happens. And I took out that clear line especially. Is right here's lorem ipsum. That's our first paragraph. So this one is either the second or the middle, and it spread it way out.
There's one
right out there. So notice how so really we don't want to float on the right. What we want here is we want all of them floated to the left. Float left means fit wherever you can to the left. Reload that. And there was space after our navigation bar, so we decided there was enough space over here to the right that we could fit all 3 columns there.
All together.
Oh, we want some margins or padding. I'm gonna go with margins because we have background color, so our margins will be white, but our padding would be blue. Padding's inside the element, margins are outside of it. Typically, we would probably want both. Let's say margin right of 2.4 characters. I'll read it that way this time. That's spreading it out a little. Margin right 2.4 characters. And probably don't need the right margin on that third one. It's applied. Oh, that was too much. And stuck it underneath. And actually, it just decided that it would fit. Like, oh, it fits fine down here. So notice it floats and adjusts and make a bigger margin. 6.4, because now, actually, I think if I take that out, it was stay like it was. I'll leave it to you all to play with the numbers. So that's why we're gonna wrap up lecture early. That's the point of wrapping up lecture early, so y'all can play with the numbers. But that's float and clear, and then percentages are the way to go here. Because then no matter what our screen size is, things dynamically adjust and size themselves based off a percentage of the screen size.
So should you do that for like margins then? What can you do margins as percentages?
Yeah, well, it's up to you in the situation. Give it a try both ways. See if you whatever you think works best. I usually don't do margins with it, but following that thing I just said, yeah, percentages would be better. But we have control over it. Mix and match them, see what you like. Now that we're seeing a lot of tools, we're coming to the point that you should be ready to maybe start looking at and developing your own style. There's lots of ways we can mix and match these. So you probably want to find the way to mix and match them that makes the most sense in your mind. There's two more I'm going to introduce real quick, but these I'm mostly going to use to point towards our best reference material. Actually, I'm going to point you toward real quickly with it. Next one is going to go really, really quick. So I'm going to come back over to the HTML page and make another link. Href equals links .html. Flex positioning. And I did do that with the ing end on purpose. It's dynamic. So let's just leave it to the browser to figure out what the best spacing is for this. So I can get this to save or save a copy. Flex.html. And then to save time, I'm just going to copy this CSS this time, and I'm going to erase all the properties about floating. Save as flex.css. Get rid of all these because I already have the selectors. Just putting different layout properties in them. I was hoping to be done by 3, but we might be at 5 after because this one's going to go very quick. Our textbook has it. Most recent edition of the textbook finally added this one. It was created around 2016, 2017. But I'm also going to use this flex and grid are the two I like to use to point at the best reference material. We've seen the official reference material and we've seen decent reference material. So let's look at the best one now. Change this to FLEX. So that page points at the right style sheet now, or should. We're back to that original positioning. So we'll look at Flexbox. So this is what you all probably do most often, right? You don't go through the Ivy Plus book, log into Ivy Learn, go to the Ivy Plus bookshelf, and then dig around and find the reference material, right? You can jump right to Google. Flexbox CSS. Oh, it's right at the top. So here's our official site, w3schools.com. Here's the one Mozilla is in Mozilla Firefox. And they also make plugins. They have custom CSS stuff that you can import into your thing. And Mozilla is big enough that their stuff's going to work on any browser. Lots and lots of videos, other materials. But the one that showed up right on top here, css-tricks.com. Bookmark that site. This is the best reference material. Complete guide to Flexbox. So looks pretty good, right? We have the background of it, where it come from, the background of it, the properties. Nice little table of contents for the stuff on this page, right? We don't just start scrolling through looking for it. Known bugs in it, in case you're having an issue, check and see if they're one of the bugs or have you report a known bug on it. Basics and terminology. Let's go down here. So here's the Flexbox. It's a container. We set our display property to flex. And which direction are we going? Are we going left to right, right to left, top to bottom, bottom to top? So row or column, and then the reverse of each one. Flex direction. Which way does it wrap? Column wrap. Flex grow and shrink. I will let you all look through some of this. I also wanted to point at this page, but we just say we have some columns. So flex direction, we want to go left to right. So let's come over here. I'm gonna add another tag here, so maybe have, oh wait, not there. I'm gonna use this incorrectly. I skipped it earlier, but I'll put it, obviously nav should probably be the navigation bar, but I'm gonna use it here this time. Because we don't have to follow those slash nav, and then I want to ended that, and then come to the end of this line and hold shift and page up until I get to the beginning. Or more than that. Highlight all that up to this line and indent all those lines. There we go. Fix the indenting all at once. Highlighting that whole tab moves it over, shift tab moves it back like normal. No surprise there. So now if we grab our nav element and set our display property to flex, it already tried to split that up into columns for us. It took it even further. It didn't. Notice it split it up. It adjusted that first row, so it made these 3 columns. That first one fit in one row, and then it adjusted thinking that was all the one. That's kind of hard thing to work. The first 3 paragraphs went in one spot, or alternating differently. But notice how it automatically put it in columns for us. That one's a lot easier. I'm gonna leave it for you all to play around with that one, but mostly in part because I want you looking at this site. This is by far the best reference material. We come back to the home page. So yeah, here, I'll copy that. Did you go to that same page, Brady? Paste this in the chat room.
Yeah, I've got it.
So there's that one in the chat room. If you come back to the home page,
CSS tricks.
It's not just a tutorial site. This is also the most popular CSS blog site. So really, really good web designers around the world submit blogs. So you can read about new tricks. There's not a trick in their name. They are full of CSS tricks and ways, people that like to experiment with putting things together in different ways. Different ways to write CSS and React. We're getting ready to look at grid. Animating CSS grid. We're going to look at grid yet next, but we probably don't need to jump to animating. But this is a new trick somebody came up with. We're like, okay, the grid's nice, but once we put it in a grid, it's like always in the grid. I want the grid to change. I don't know exactly what they did. You can see the CSS, the HTML. Oh, there's the grid size. Grid size is changing on hover. We haven't talked about grid yet. We should talk about what grid is.
Next week or not? Yeah.
Yeah. CSS. I want to make sure there's plenty of time. So CSS grid, and this time I'm going to put CSS tricks right in the search bar. Notice that Google already knew that I wanted to put that. Yeah, in general, that's not just my opinion that this is the best site. Millions of web developers around the world will tell you that this is the best site. This is the best reference material. Complete guide to CSS grid, just like the Flex one. So notice that we set up the grid. It does not have to be an evenly spaced grid. Set it up anywhere we want, and we say go from this line, and right, we have go from this line and this line, fill in this space. We can do even better though. We'll look at this Monday. We will jump into grid Monday.
We'll look at the Flex.
We can give them names. That's even easier. So we can say header, main, sidebar, and then it goes across the grid. Header, main, skip it, sidebar, footer. And we just saw in that new blog that was on the homepage, probably came out in the past couple weeks. That grid can be animated too. CSS, Flex, and Grid, those are the two you're going to want to use the most. It's a dynamic subject we learn by doing. We'll walk through them. We'll walk through them very quick example on Monday. But did you get to this one, Brady? Or see what I searched?
Yeah.
I put it in there. Yeah, I just put CSS Grid, and then I put CSS Tricks in there. By far the best reference materials. So part of the actively learning and doing stuff is I want y'all to spend a little bit of time with the best reference materials. So Flex and Grid, notice we have pictures of what they do, code examples where we, dynamic code examples, we can redact those, but you probably don't need to get there yet. Add spacing and margins. Those are really, really easy to use. It's really nice when we get into the named areas here. But
yeah, it looks like that's fairly intuitive and easy.
And these are saying header, footers, so it is all our selectors. So in our case, we'd say dot first, or dot left, dot middle, dot right. What else have we used? IDs. So hash, tag ID, whatever we put there. Oh, we haven't seen attribute selectors. We'll see attribute selectors on Monday, so we put that there. Any of our CSS selectors can go there. It's cool. That is a really, really nice one. And this is by far the best reference material. So I guess it's kind of like a reading assignment for our lab. What I call lab time, right? It's an active subject we learn by doing. For those last two, CSS Grid and CSS Flex. Include this as like a reading assignment, skimming assignment. You don't have to read the web pages. Scroll really quick and look for the picture you're looking for. Like, oh, that's what I want to do. So not necessarily. I'm not going to quiz you over the reading, but go through that. We have what 45 minutes left in our schedule block time. Schedule should be marked off until 3:50. You're learning CSS, so I'm going to suggest doing this. I'm going to be sitting in my office. If you have any questions, send me a message and we can hop on a Zoom call immediately. But this is an active subject we learn by doing. Y'all are really going to like these last two. They're very intuitive. Flex sometimes becomes a bit non-intuitive when it doesn't lay out the way we would expect. So actually, like here, we only have two colors, right? Remember, we're going down. So our first column, then our second column, and then third column, and it just kind of we got that end result that alternating colors don't work so well when we put them in columns. And we can see it here where it's dynamic columns better. If I change the size, it's going to flex differently. It's going to do everything it can to try 3 columns. I thought it might drop it at some point. It kept 3 columns. But it said displayed as a column. There were 3 elements in there, so it is going to do everything it possibly can to make those 3 elements each become their own column. It's a really, really nice way to do our layouts. Both of those are, but it's an active subject we'll learn by doing, and we'll go through a quick example of that Monday. If you have any questions, let me know. Not just for the next 45 minutes. For the next 45 minutes, I'm not doing anything but sitting around waiting on questions. Feel free to ask me questions anytime, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Verify your unit. Yep. We're here, and I will upload all these real quick. The normal routine. Does anybody have any questions?
For me, I just want to look at your Flex DS. I was still updating things when you were doing that.
What just happened? Okay, the ad used too many resources, but Google blocked it themselves. In case you forgot, Google is an advertising company. That is for sole purpose. It was great when they were like Congress had them come in and report, and Congress starts drilling them about all sorts of internet stuff. They're just like, we're an advertising company. All we do is tell marketing firms what ads people want to see. and then show people the ads. People seem to forget that Google is a middleman for advertisers. And that is all they are.
Despite having the single most well-beloved and used search engine out of all of them.
But the search engine is to attract people to the advertisers.
And also having probably
The whole purpose of it is to attract people to the advertisements.
And probably also the most popular email.
Yeah. But again, that is for data collection. So they turn around and tell the advertisers what
are you doing?
How's it doing this? Is this Google doing this? Or is this the network?
Chrome has built-in features. I think it's Chrome itself.
Yeah, I think that's the latest Chrome update because Chrome did update this week and started doing that. Oh yeah, we're going to address it today. But it's been a minute since I asked. Nobody said they had any questions, so those examples are on the page.
Oh yeah, we were going to talk about security stuff.
Yeah,
but we didn't.
I forgot about it until it did it again.
Your website's working on my end.
It must be my Chrome. It might be the school network because the school just enhanced their security, so it could be here at the school. In which case, I need to put in a bypass for the ones we use in class. Because otherwise, I'm going to hear from people. I'm going to hear from all the SDEV instructors around the state. Why is this not working anymore?
Why has my stuff exploded?
Yes. Yeah, I'm the vice chair for software development statewide. So those questions will be coming my way if it is the schools network. But I assume that means no questions yet. If you have any, let me know. Otherwise, it's an active subject. We learn by doing. So please use the time productively. Those next two features and that website I just pointed you towards are really, really great. Those are the two you're going to use. You're really going to want to use most often. But we can also mix and match. We can do absolute and relative and floating inside of a flex box. So give things a try. Trial and error, see what you can do. We're coming to the point you're ready to start developing your own style. So we'll make sure there's plenty of time to do that. Otherwise, y'all have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday.